This is me and my beautiful wife when we got married. Look at that head of hair I have. Wow. That was a good memory. Go to the next one. This is the birth of my son Samuel. You know, when he was born, like he was crying on that table, right? And because the nurse took him away. And the minute I came over right there and I spoke to him, he stopped. It's like he recognized my voice. Great memory. Go to the next one. This is the last cruise with my mom. My mom passed away from cancer. She knew she was going to pass away at some point, so she decided to take some of her retirement money and splurge and send my brother and my sister and our spouses on a cruise with her. And so it was a great memory. Go ahead. This has no relevance to the message whatsoever. This is my beautiful wife. I just wanted to share that with you. Go ahead to the next one. You might recognize a couple of faces in there. Those are my boys and my nephews. Very good day. You know, we have these memories of our past that are just, that we love to think about. We love to reminisce about. I look at these and I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that, right? All these great memories. But here's the thing. All of us have some things in our past that aren't so great. Some memories maybe that we wish we could forget. Some things in our past that are painful. Is there anything worse than being chained down by your past? It may not be some horrible sin that you committed. It may be a small thing, a setback, or something we wish we could do over again. But we become haunted by our past. It affects how we see ourselves. We often define ourselves by our past, right? We define ourselves. We feel like because of our mistakes, we are damaged goods. We are worthless. It affects our relationships with others. You know what? What's sad is people often define us by our past mistakes. All they see is this person who failed. It affects how we live. One of two ways it affects how we live. We either embrace our past mistakes and become the person everyone, including ourselves, defines us as. We just kind of come up with this. We just kind of go, you know what? I give up. Why fight it? I'm just going to be what they expect me to be. What I expect. What they have defined me as, that's what I'm going to be. It sickens us and we hate who we are, but we've given up hope. Or the other way we choose to live with our past is we try to pay for our past. We do charity work. We give to the needy. We try to become the best possible person we can in hopes of making up for our past. Or we cover it up. We try to do as many good things as we can in order to cover up what we've done in our past. But here's the thing, no matter what we do, we can't escape what we've done or who we've become. Have you found that to be true in your life? You just can't escape it. You can't escape what you did in the past, and you can't change who you are. That's where we are. We feel like we can't change. We just keep coming back to that same thing. That we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And here's the thing. We have a fear of our past. Because of all this, we fear our past. So today we're going to do something. We're going to start a new series. called Spooked. And for the next several weeks, we're going to be looking at different fears that we face and how God can help us defeat those fears. Because here's the thing, when God is in your life, there's no need to be afraid. Listen to this verse in Isaiah 41:10. It says this, "Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand." When God is on your side, there's no reason to be afraid. And that includes being afraid of your past. That's the fear we're going to talk about today, that fear of our past, because that fear of our past brings up questions for us, right? As I've been talking, maybe you are relating to what I'm saying. You have a fear of your past, and you're like, I get it, Pastor, I relate to everything you're saying, but I need a solution, so get to that fast. I need to know what I can do. You're saying, man, will I ever be free from the mistakes I've made? Will I always be destined to repeat these mistakes? Will other people always define me by my past? Will God always define me by my mistakes? Can I ever be something new? Have you ever asked yourself those questions? Have you ever wrestled with those questions? Well, there's a man in the Bible by the name of Paul. And he wrote a letter to the early church that you can find in the New Testament that answers these questions in a powerful way. And we're going to look at that together. And we're going to start in the very first verse in 2 Corinthians 5:17. It's a powerful verse. I want you to read it with me. 2 Corinthians 5:17. It's up on the screen. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn there. But it says this, "This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun." What Paul is saying in this verse is the heart of the message I want you to hear today. Your past may have defined you, but Jesus can redefine you. Your past may have defined you, but Jesus can redefine you. That's what he's saying here. You don't need to be afraid of your past anymore. When you have Jesus in your life, he will redefine you. No one exemplifies this better than Paul himself. Before he became a follower of Jesus, he persecuted the early church. Think about that for a moment. He went and chased after the people who called themselves Christians, and he would throw them in prison. In fact, one of them, he held the coats and encouraged people to stone one of the disciples called Stephen. Think about that. While they murdered this man, he was holding their coats, egging them on. But one day, on his way to harass another church, Paul had an encounter with Jesus. It was a miraculous encounter. Jesus basically knocked him off a donkey in a blinding flash of light and began to speak to him. And because of this miraculous encounter with Jesus, Paul became a follower of Jesus. But he still had his past. But his whole life changed in that moment. In that moment when he met Jesus, his whole life changed. He became this new person. And here's the amazing thing. He went from going after Christians and throwing them in prison, to suddenly now he becomes the person who writes 2/3 of the New Testament. When you pick up your Bible and you look at the New Testament, that's that second half of the Bible, he wrote 2/3 of it. Think about that change that had to occur in him. When we think of Paul today, we don't think of the guy who stoned or helps encourage people to stone Stephen. We think of Paul, the guy who wrote so many of the words that we look at and we shape our lives around. How did that happen? How did he become so different? Because he met Jesus. He became a follower of Jesus. It was such a radical change that many in the early church movement didn't believe it. They thought he was faking it so he could infiltrate their ranks and arrest more of them. It was such a radical change. In an instant, he became a follower of Jesus, and Jesus changed him. I want to take a closer look at Paul's words to see how we can have what he had. Because I don't know about you, but maybe you're dealing with something in your past. Maybe you have this fear of your past. Maybe you're like, man, I want to be somebody new. I want to be changed. Jesus can give that to you. But let's look at how that happens. In that first verse, in verse 17, it says this: this means that anyone who belongs to Christ. This is speaking to people who believe in Jesus. You have to accept Jesus as the leader of your life for this to apply to you. It's not enough just to acknowledge that there is a God. You have to believe in Jesus. And not only believe in him, you have to choose to follow him. You see, it's not enough to have this mental assent that says, yes, I believe that Jesus existed. Jesus is a good guy. That's not enough. You have to choose to follow him, to make him the leader of your life. And when you do that, that's when you begin to change. That's when this verse applies to you. That's when that old life is gone and that new life begins. Paul didn't change until he became a follower of Jesus. When you become a follower of Jesus, this is what happens. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, it goes on. It says this: this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. You see, you and I, the problem we all face is that without Jesus, we can't change our own identity. No matter how much we try to cover it up, our past is still there. You are still you. You see, you don't have the authority to declare yourself changed. Without Jesus, you don't have the authority. Anyone can say, hey, I'm not that person I used to be anymore. I've changed. But we don't have any authority. Who will believe us? Maybe you've experienced that. Maybe you've gone and told somebody, man, yeah, I'm different, I'm changed. And they're like, no, I don't believe you. Why should they believe us? You see, we need someone with authority to declare that we are new. We need to tell those people, say, listen, I'm not new because I said it. I'm new because he said it. You see, the other problem is that you and I, we don't have the power to change. The truth is we can't change ourselves. We try all the time. We do those New Year's resolutions. We do diets. We make promises to our loved ones. But every AA member, every Celebrate Recovery member learns this important truth. We are powerless to change ourselves. We need help. We need help. And that is where Jesus comes in. He's the Son of God. He has the authority to declare you a new person. And not only that, but he has the power to help you become that new person. He's not just saying, hey, you're new and that's it, and you just go on doing all those things that you were doing. No, he says, you're new, and now I'm going to help you become new. I'm going to give you the power to be new. Let me show you how Jesus helps us to become a new person. Let's continue with this verse. It says this. In verse 17, it says, the old life is gone. You see, before we accepted Jesus as the leader of our life, we are under the power and control of sin. That's why we can't change ourselves. We may have limited success in changing some of our behaviors, but at the core, we remain the same. No matter how hard we try, we can't seem to change our behavior. We constantly go back to it. It's like we're a broken record. And that behavior is part of why you struggle and I struggle with our self-worth. We feel like our behavior defines us. We're alcoholics. We're liars. We're gossips. We're cheaters. Because we struggle with these behaviors so much and we can't seem to change them, we think they define us. This is who I am. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a liar. I'm a cheater. But Jesus frees us. Listen to what Paul says in another verse, in another passage, another letter that he wrote. I love this. In Romans chapter 6, verses 6 through 13, this is what he says. He says, we know that our old sinful selves were crucified with Christ so that sin might lose its power in our lives. We are no longer slaves to sin. For when we died with Christ, we were set free from the power of sin. When he died once to break the power of sin. But now that he lives for the glory of God. So you also should consider yourselves to be dead to the power of sin and alive to God through Christ Jesus. Do not let sin control the way you live. Do not give in to its sinful desires. Do not let any part of your body become an instrument of evil to serve sin. Do you know why he can tell us that? Do you know why that last part, he can command us to not let sin control us? Is because now we have the power to say no. I don't know how. I don't know how Jesus does it. I really don't. But all I know is that he has given us the power to say no. He has freed us from the power and control of sin. The old life of slavery, where you keep going back to that same old sin over and over and over again, and you can't stop yourself. He breaks that. He frees you. And he makes it possible for you to change. You now have the power to say no. But not only does Jesus free us to change, he gives us the desire to change. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, it says this. It says, the old life is gone, a new life has begun. A new life has begun. You know, before becoming a follower of Jesus, we were comfortable in our sin. Yeah, we may have been ashamed. And we claimed to want to change. But that sin was a part of us. It's all we've ever known. We've grown comfortable with it. Our past mistakes and those desires to repeat those mistakes, that's just part of who we are. We don't know anything else. Those mistakes, that lifestyle has defined us. And we've grown comfortable with it. You know, not long ago, and I've had to redo this too, I grew comfortable with my weight gain. I gained some weight. I'm working on it, but I grew comfortable with it. There was a point, man, I used to be sick. Man, I'd be trying to lose weight. I'd do all kinds of stuff. But then there was this point where I just kind of like gave up. And it was kind of after my back surgery. It was really hard. I couldn't really exercise and stuff. And I just kind of gave up. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna go with it, you know? I'm just gonna go with it. And you know what? I got bigger and bigger, right? And it wasn't until I finally looked in the mirror and I saw what I had become and I became sick with it. And I realized I need to change. I need to change. You see, I had grown comfortable with myself being the size that I was. It was just like, whatever. I'm just going with it. You know, some of us, we've grown so comfortable with our sin. And there's a point where we need to get sick of it. And we need to say, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm done with it. I need to change. I need to get rid of this. I need to be somebody new. You've let that sin define you for too long. You've let that old life define you for far too long. Now it's time to be something new. Jesus gives us that desire to finally say, yes, I want to change. I want to be different. In 2 Corinthians 5, verse 14 through 15, it says this, For Christ's love compels us. For Christ's love compels us. Because we are convinced that one died for all, and therefore all died. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. It's because of Jesus' love that we decide, you know what? I'm done. I'm done living that way. I'm done with that old life. I'm no longer comfortable with that. I need to be something new. He gives us the power to change, and then he gives us the desire to change. He changes our desire so much that we become sick with that sin. It no longer holds any pleasure for us. Let me just warn you, if you are not yet a believer, if you're not yet a Christian, when you become one, God is going to change your desires. And that old life isn't going to hold the pleasure that it once had for you. Because he's going to change your desires. He's going to change them, and you're going to become sick with that. Sick with that old life. We are going to desire to honor and obey him because of his love for us. His love, that love for him compels us. Now we're going to still struggle with sin. Sin can be attractive, right? It calls to us. He never says that he's going to free us from that until we reach heaven, of course. But no longer is that the only voice that we hear. When we have Jesus in our life, we're not only going to hear that call of sin. Now we hear a new voice, his voice. And we hear God's voice of love calling us to be obedient. But we have to choose which one will we listen to. Which one will we give into? But here's the thing. Because of Jesus, we now have a choice. Because Jesus has come into our life, we now have the choice to say no. You see, you and I no longer have to be afraid of our past. You may have wondered, will your past always define you? But as I said earlier, your past may have defined you, but Jesus can redefine you. But the key to that is to becoming his follower. Now, I know there's a lot of people in this room that have already given their life to Jesus. You've already committed to following him. And you know what's amazing, church? There are so many stories in this place. You would be amazed at who you're sitting next to. In my previous church, I was so shocked because here I'd been pastoring for a couple of years, and then finally I learned some of the stories of the people that were in my church. And I'm looking at these people and I'm going, you did what? You were what? We had this little lady who in our church, the sweetest lady. Oh, she was just sweet. And she tells us the story of how she used to be this rageaholic. And she would beat people up. She was this little old lady that, I mean, she wasn't really that old. She was 60, 70, so she was somewhat. But you wouldn't have thought it. Just a sweet, sweet lady. And she starts talking about, yeah, this one lady came to my house, and man, I came out of that door swinging, I pounded on her face while I'm laying on top of her. And I'm looking at this lady, and I'm going, you're pulling my leg. No way. And she's like, yeah. Because, the reason that I didn't believe it is because Jesus had changed her. She was different. You would be amazed at who you're sitting next to. Or maybe you'd be amazed at who they used to be. But when Jesus gets a hold of you, he changes you.